D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Hello Gamer Nation and welcome to the Dice Pool Podcast Live Play Edition. I'm your host Ian Houlihan, better known as GM Hooli. This is an example play episode using the GeneSys Role Playing Game by Fantasy Flight Games. Our story this episode is set in the fantasy world of Mennara on the continent of Terrinoth, made famous by the rune-bound setting by Fantasy Flight Games. For those not familiar with the setting, you may wish to check out The Descent, Rune-bound or Rune Wars board games, the Legacy of Dragonholt narrative adventure game, or even the Rune Wars miniatures game, all by Fantasy Flight Games. Before we start, I should mention that some parts of this episode are spent teaching the game to a new player. We love new players and would like to encourage you to introduce new players into your game, as we have in this episode. This is the third part of a multi-part story arc, with the later chapters releasing shortly after this episode. If you haven't listened to part 1 and part 2, we would highly recommend going back and listening to those first. For further announcements about the podcast, including further releases of this story arc, stay tuned to social media by searching Dice Pool Podcast or visiting us on the web at thedicepoolpodcast.com. In the last episode, the players came face to face with Lady Farrow, a noblewoman who the players feel may be responsible, or at least have knowledge of, the murders of several townsfolk in an isolated homestead previously visited in episode 1, coupled with Jurik's run-in with a beastly Begest in the woods outside of the inn, and the party's subsequent discovery of a stable-hand's body in the room formerly occupied by Lady Farrow. The PCs quickly determine that Lady Farrow, or at least one of her entourage, is the prime suspect in the murders. Armed with this information, the PCs commence their chase after the noblewoman on horses provided by the innkeeper. Will they capture Lady Farrow in time before she disappears in the Nerek Hall? Perhaps it's time to take a look and see what the players are up to. So as you remember, you were last at the tavern and you have managed to get onto the horses that were given by the innkeeper, and you've headed off in pursuit of Lady Farrow. What we're going to do for this part is that we're going to do that as a chase. So I'm going to get each one of you to roll your initiative check, please. All right, so what did you roll for your initiative check, Caitlin?
1 and 3.
And Madeline?
0 and 2.
Michael?
2 and 3.
And Martin?
1 and 2.
Okay, so my NPCs have rolled 4 and 3, 2 and 1, and 1 and 2. So if we work that out, so an NPC, a player, an NPC, 2 players, an NPC, and a player. All good? Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, so since we're going to be doing this as a chase, what I'm going to get each one of you to do is roll your riding check. So it's going to be a simple check with a setback die for you people because you haven't had any sleep for the last 24 hours. Okay, go ahead. All right, so the way that a chase is worked out isn't presented in the rules for GeneSys as such, so we'll have to use the Star Wars role-playing game instead. Now, the best way to explain this is that each of you use a maneuver in the round to perform a check, perform a riding check, and this is taken out of outside of the combat round, but still counts as a use of a maneuver for that round. Now, that happens every single round, so we'll do that as we go. Now, the checks in a chase are competitive. In other words, you make a check and then you tally up your successes. Now, for the purpose of this, also, I'm going to assume that each of you are travelling at the same speed. Speed in chases does have an effect, but we won't go on to that here because, as I said, it's not covered in the rules, so it's not really important. So for this case, you're all travelling at the same speed. Now, each of you, when you've made your check, the number of successes you roll is equal to the number of range bands that you move forward. All right, so Caitlin, what did you get?
I got a 7. I got a 7 and 1, which was 7 successes and 1 advantage.
Okay, Michael?
I got 1 success and 1 advantage.
Martin?
Just straight 3 successes.
3 successes. And Madeline, what did you get?
I got a 1 and 3.
1 success and 3 advantages. Excellent. As you're racing through the forest, you're following the trail, which is obvious, or the road, which is going through to Nerrick Hall. And you can see off in the distance the carriage, which is drawn by the two white horses, and it's going at a great rate of knots. You can hear the whip quite clearly as the coachman is whipping the horses to make good headway. Okay, so now that we've worked out where all of the successes, I can tell you that the carriage driver he's rolled 2 successes and 5 advantages. So when you first enter into the scene, you are currently at medium range. Okay, so I'll just go around the table and you can describe to me what is going on in the scene. So after we calculate where everybody is as far as your successes and whatever else, Michael, can you tell me where everybody is in relation to everybody else?
Sure thing. Leoric, the human wizard played by Martin, he's managed to catch up to the coach fairly well. For such a book-learned man, he's quite sprightly riding a horse, to everyone's surprise. However, not as sprightly as Durek, Caitlin's character, who has completely smashed her riding check and has shot past the coach, whilst Alma and myself, Alice, are lagging behind at quite some distance away because we're not that proficient at riding horses.
Rightio. So, Caitlin, since you're the one that's in the lead, what are you going to do? Tell me what this scene is going to look like.
So, Jurek is going to be pushing his horse as fast as he can because he really wants to catch up with these people, particularly because there's so many dead bodies behind and he's in his element right now. So he is going to be pushing that horse and he's going to actually overtake the carriage and is going to jump in front of them. Not so much that that he's engaged with them, but a range band in front of them, and is actually going to rear up his horse on his hind legs to throw off the carriage.
Cool. Okay, so that's going to give him setback die for the check, and it's going to sort of send him off into.
It's definitely going to throw him off, and going to give him a setback to his next check.
Cool. Excellent. All right. So who's next in line? That'd be Leoric.
Yeah. So I've raced up. I haven't quite caught the carriage, but I'm right hot on its heels.
Short range, to be precise.
Short range, yeah.
Cool. Well, one of the things that you can see on the carriage, you can see that the coachman, he's whipping the horses quite violently. You can sort of see as you get a little bit closer, and also, Caitlin, you can see as you've ridden past that the horses they have welt marks in them that as the whip is hitting its hide.
I'm going to kill them.
You also see that there is on top of the carriage, next to the carriage rider, is one of the guardsmen who is dressed in some sort of armour on. You can see he's sort of like turning around and watching what's actually going on around him. And you can, as you just, Caitlin, as you ride past, you can see that the curtains are drawn. From the back, Martin, however, you can see that one of the curtains sort of moves slightly, and you can see her through the window as she sort of gives you a cold stare.
Okay.
So what are you doing back at that? I mean, you've got 0 advantages, so there's not a lot that you can do, I guess.
At this stage, I just I keep pace.
Cool. All right. So in the meantime, Michael.
Well, I've only rolled one advantage for my riding check. So I guess basically what I use that for is to shout out some encouraging words and direct our party members, and essentially give a small boost by passing a boost dice to the next active player.
Okay, cool. All right, Madeline, so you got 3 advantages. What are you going to do?
Ulma is quite far back from the carriage, so she can actually see a little bit further up ahead. And because Jurek reared on the horse and has pressured them to go in sort of a different direction, Ulma can see that they've gone onto a more rocky road and a bit more...
Hazardous.
Yes.
Hazardous. Okay,
than the normal
cool.
part.
Awesome.
Somewhere a coach will have a bad time.
All right, so with my 5 advantages, however, yes, it's completely off-road, but there is if you look ahead, you can see that there, just beyond the forest itself, you can see that there is a ravine, and there is a rickety old bridge which leads across the ravine. So that's, I think, where we're going to start our combat. So the NPCs are going to be going first. So you can see that the guardsman, he draws a weapon. He draws his sword and prepares to defend himself. So we've got the first active player. Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to take that slot if no one else wants it. So because... stop me if I can't do this,
sure.
Obviously. What I would like Jurek to do is, because he is close, I would like to use a maneuver to get closer in order to jump onto the carriage. And jumping right next to the coach driver to get up in his face and hopefully stop him whipping those horses, because that has rubbed me the wrong way.
Sure. Okay, so this is going to require some timing, and I'm thinking a coordination roll would be most appropriate. And I'm going to suggest it's going to be a hard check. So that's going to be 3 purple die. Don't forget, because you are currently a little bit sleep deprived, you can add a setback die as well.
Now, would she also possibly get the boosts you would normally get for riding the horse? Because a horse is more suited for this sort of activity?
If she was riding the horse, sure, but this is just jumping across from the horse. So this is more of her own skill.
Don't forget the boost that my character is providing with her inspiring words.
Okay. If anyone has any objections, would you mind if I flip a story point in order to upgrade my check?
I object. I really go for it.
What's that look like?
So, he has gotten a whole bunch of confidence that he has managed to go up in front of them. Plus, he's seen the welts on the side of the horse. And as much as me as a person doesn't like that, Jurek, being someone who is very one with nature and a very big person in terms of being one in the forest and the types of animals that are around there, doesn't like that either.
Right.
So that's actually going to spur him on to make sure he makes that jump.
He is somewhat inspired.
And he's also very targeted at the person inflicting that on the animals.
Cool.
Particularly as a means to save their own skin. He's not a big fan. Not a big fan of that at all. So he has basically gone like full blood rage at that carriage driver.
Right.
So
make that check.
I hope I make it. Okay. So. So many. So, X's are not good in this whatsoever.
No, they're not.
Now, I have 4 failures, 1 advantage.
Right.
But a triumph.
Nice. So you've jumped from the horse and missed.
Yeah. I wouldn't say completely.
No, that is true. So you've rolled 1 advantage, is that right?
I've rolled 1 advantage and a triumph.
Okay, so what does that look like?
I'm thinking, because I was aiming for the carriage driver. I wanted to be right next and in his face.
Sure.
So I completely missed that. And what I'm thinking is that rather than landing nicely next to him, I don't quite land so much as I get hit violently by the carriage speeding past, but with my advantage, I managed to grip onto the side of the carriage. So I am still technically on it, but I'm going to have to require a few maneuvers and probably also take some strain in order to remain with the carriage. And
So you're dragging along the dirt?
I was thinking like holding onto the side of the door kind of thing, and then like flailing
So,
as much as a,
And your composure.
so what did your triumph do?
So would my advantage allow me to stay on, like, gripping onto the side of the carriage?
Onto the side of the carriage, absolutely. I'd be happy with it.
Can't throw an idea at you?
Of course you can.
As you've jumped and missed, you've managed to grab the whipping cane from the coachman and yanked it out of his hands. So he's got nothing to whip the horses with anymore.
Oh, that's a good one. And that kind of throws them off.
Slows them down a little
It
bit.
slows them down, because that was the intention as
Yeah.
It's going to
as
slow them
well.
down, and perhaps it will upgrade the difficulty of the next check.
Yeah,
'Cause-
particularly when it comes to the chase check. Should upgrade the difficulty for them to do that.
Will the rider be making a drive check because he's going over dangerous terrain?
Yes, he will be.
So it'll upgrade that.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. So that's what I like to use that triumph for.
Yep, cool, excellent. All right. So,
I grab the whip and start whipping him with it.
all right, so you've grabbed the whip now. Lyric is... who'd like to go next? So there's another NPC slot. So the other NPC slot, you can see her staring at you through the curtains.
I can sense her malicious intent.
You can indeed. So you're hanging on the side of the carriage at this point. All right. So the coach driver, he's now been forced off into to this side road, which is all bumpy terrain and rock filled and whatever else. And it obviously was used at one stage, maybe while the main road was getting repaired. So it was used sort of as an offshoot. Unfortunately, that's not really good terrain for the carriage.
A luxurious city coach.
And so as a result, he is now going to have to try to manoeuvre that with this large carriage and no whip to control these horses. So that's going to be interesting for him. All right, so he's going to have to make a check to go through that difficult terrain. So the difficult terrain is going to be 2 purples because of the carriage size. It's going to be upgraded once because of the speed that the carriage is doing. It'll be upgraded again because of the lack of a whip, which has come from the Orcs Triumph before. There's going to be a setback die for the difficult terrain. There's going to be another setback die because of the horse rearing up. But there's also going to be 2 boost die because these horses are pretty much used to what's going on. Now, his skill would be 2 greens and 2 yellows because he's got 4 agility as well as the 2 in riding skill. I'm going to flip a story point, and the reason why is because he is under fear of death from what Lady Farrow will do if he fails to reach the destination. So that means that it's going to be 2 yellows and a green instead of what I had before.
Well, I'll stop you there, Ian.
Yes.
We're going to flip a story point back
Oh dear.
because he's under the fear of death. So he's also stressed out about that.
He's also stressed out about that. Excellent. So that's going to add a purple die to the equation. Because in this scenario, I don't have any more to upgrade, so I automatically add a purple dice. That's interesting.
It's a roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster, right.
It's full of ups and downs.
All right, so the check is a failure with 3 advantages and a triumph. The way that this looks is that suddenly there's just sparks which are flying off the rims of the carriage as it goes careening off down this roadway. One of the horses actually breaks away as part of the mechanism snaps off. The advantages I'm going to use to keep the whole thing all in one piece. However, it's going to take a critical hit. Okay, so the critical hit. So that's a 38. Now, I believe that I add to that due to the vehicle's speed. Is that correct?
Correct. You add a plus 20 because the carriage is going at a fair rate of knots.
Good Lord. So that's going to be, 58?
Yep.
What does 58 mean in a critical hit?
58, that is navigation damage. So I believe one of your horses has indeed come astray and run off. That gives you a -3 to the coach's handling.
Oh dear. Right, so I'm thinking that that's probably going to get rid of those 2 additional boost die that I was using before, giving me yet another setback die for the check. However, I have a triumph left over. So for the triumph, he actually makes it, even though that the horse has gone one way. And the carriage's sparks are flying, it actually manages to make it to the bridge. And the bridge is very, very rickety and whatever else, so it goes straight across the bridge. You can hear the grinding and the creaking of the bridge under the weight of the carriage. Okay, so who'd like to go next?
Let's see. Who's he next? Oric.
Leoric has an idea. He's closing in behind the carriage, and he can feel the pressure of the lady inside the carriage staring at him. But the plan that he's got in mind is that he's going to call upon his magic, and he's going to try and strike loose the chains that bind the horse to the carriage, the last remaining horse.
Interesting. Okay, so magic is not something which has been seen other than in GeneSys, and it's quite interesting the way that it works. So Martin, would you like to step us through that?
So in this case, Leoric has a spell, a signature spell called Arcane Spear, which is where he calls upon the magic that he's been trained to use and fires it at his target. For him, this is an average check. Okay, I'm using the skill Arcana. And if the check succeeds, he would deal 8 damage, +1 per success, which is pretty scary, and it has a crit rating of 2 and a vicious quality 3.
Ouch.
So it's pretty nasty, but I'm going to be doing a cold shot.
Right, you're going to be actually firing at her directly.
Not at the joins to the
joins of the carriage.
Horse.
Okay, excellent.
Yep. Now that gives me 2 setbacks to the check.
Yes, it does.
So I've got a difficulty of 2. So it's an average check.
Yep.
I've got 2 setback. I'd like to use my remaining maneuver.
Yep.
Which is going to cost me 2 strain.
Yes.
In addition to the 2 strain that I need to incur in order to cast this spell, because it's very tiring. So because I've used that maneuver, I'm going to reduce the setbacks that I'm incurring for this check by 1.
Nice.
And then for my Arcana, I have 3 ranks and 4 intellect.
So that's going to equate to 1 green and 3 yellows, is it not?
That's right.
Excellent.
Okay, that's my check. Are you going to do anything?
I'm thinking that because you're moving and you're doing this from a fast-moving horse, I think that's going to be an extra setback die as well. That's it for the moment. Are you going to upgrade the check at all?
I don't think I will.
Okay, well, you can flip one of those points because she obviously has control of the magic realm as well, and she's manipulating things to make it more difficult for you, protecting herself, so to speak.
So that will upgrade one of the difficulty dice.
That is correct.
Into a challenge dice. All right, let's see how this goes. So I've succeeded with 2 successes and an advantage.
Nice. So that's going to hit those chains, and the chains explode, leaving the other horse. Is this the other horse to run free? So tell me what that looks like.
So the magic arcs from Leoric's outstretched hand, striking true against the chain, splitting it quite well, and the horse basically bolts forward whilst the yoke that was binding it to the carriage slams towards the ground and starts digging it.
So it's suddenly sort of grinding itself into the bridge. Yeah.
Now that's where I'm going to use my advantage on and add causing some strain to the vehicle, the carriage in this case.
Awesome. All right, so it takes a point of system strain as well. Okay. So who's next up in the initiative order?
It's another PC, I believe.
Another PC.
Well, I'll tell you what. Alice Rain will go next because she can't do a whole lot from all the way back at what am I at? Long range away from the rear of the coach as it thunders across the bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get some divine influence into the situation, and I'm going to cast Righteousness of the Citadel. Not on myself, but I'm going to cast that onto my friend Alma, because I realise she's a little bit lacking when it comes to the ability to ride a horse, being with her little dwarf legs. So I'm going to try and assist her.
Yep.
And it's very similar to what Martin has just done with his magic. I simply make a divine check with a hard difficulty. If I succeed, Madeline's character adds an extra ability dice to her next check.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Very good.
So she can use that in her upcoming turn or even in the chase.
Excellent.
Divine ability is pretty good. I've got 3 ranks in it with a willpower of 3, so that's going to be 3 yellow dice. So I'm riding a horse, so I'm assuming this is making my concentration a little bit more difficult.
Yep.
So I had a setback for that.
And don't forget that you haven't had any sleep for the last 24 hours either.
This is very true. All right, so I've got, all up, I've got 3 yellow dice, 3 purple dice, and 2 setback.
Right.
So knowing how I roll, there's probably going to be all advantages and no successes. So let's see how we go. In fact, you know what? Can I spin a maneuver to focus or aim and give myself a boost dice?
I'd allow that.
So I'm taking 2 strain for this because I've already done a maneuver to participate in the chase.
Sure.
Yep. I have rolled a complete neutral.
Right. So obviously the gods aren't necessarily with you right now.
No, they can't keep up on my thundering horse.
All right. So
with the fizzle of divine sparks, nothing occurs.
all right. So who's next? NPC?
Yeah.
Okay. So the NPC that we will look at now is definitely going to be Miss Farrow, as she's going to cast a spell. All right, so the Lady Farrow, she's going to use her arcane knowledge to cast a quite a horrific spell, and she's going to direct it at the bridge to bring the bridge down so that you guys can't follow. Unfortunately, the orc is still attached to the carriage at this point, so that could be quite bad for the orc, but we'll soon find out. All right, so she has she's got 3 in Arcana and she has 4 in Intellect, so she's rolling 3 yellows and a green. The difficulty is just normally going to be to cast the spell. That's going to be 1 purple, but because it's going to be at a range band away, that's going to increase that difficulty by 1. She's making a called shot, so it's going to be 2 setback die, and she's doing it from this careening carriage, which is hurtling down this rickety bridge, so that's going to be another setback. Now, she is going to use 2 maneuvers. There's going to be some serious strain costs. She's going to take 2 strain from casting the spell. She's going to take another 2 strain to aim twice. So she's going to remove those 2 setback, and leaving one setback, and she's just going to make the check.
I think that this is a pretty important moment for us, and I'd like to spend a story point to upgrade the difficulty for her.
Okay.
Because this is she's calling upon the dark magics in this area in a very precarious situation, and controlling that sort of magic could go quite poorly for her.
And there's also my character, Alice Rain, you know, the figure of, you know, this righteous light, is trying to call upon her own sort of deities. And so there's almost like this conflict between the two in a way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the magical realms.
Maybe like a magic dead spot. Okay, so let's make this check. That's actually going to be a success with some threat, but also rolling 2 tribes. Okay, so what that actually means in this scenario is that she hits the bridge. The bridge explodes from this magical attack, and
Winds of dark energy.
winds of dark energy as it slams into the bridge, and the rest of the bridge goes careening downwards as the carriage continues on. However, the other tribe, and I'm going to link this in with, because I didn't flip one to upgrade the check, I'm going to flip one of the GM story points over to affect the narrative a little bit. So in this, using that in coupling that with the tribe. So suddenly there's this swirl of dark energy, and Jurek is left holding nothing but inky blackness as suddenly the whole of the carriage, the rider, the guardsman, and even her just suddenly turn into this cloud of what look like bats, and it just disappears into the night sky.
Silhouetted by the full moon.
Silhouetted, that is so cool. Silhouetted by the full moon. I like that a lot.
You gotta have that.
Nice. As Miss Farrow has escaped your clutches.
Oh. Yeah.
So, you currently are on the wrong side of the ravine, but Jurek is actually on the right side of the ravine. All right, so yes, you've certainly created a problem for her in the fact that she no longer has any horses, and she has a horseless carriage.
And now there is no question about her nature.
Indeed.
To us, at least.
So what are you going to do now, guys?
Well, we need to cross this ravine, and there is now no bridge. Is there perhaps a way that we can pick our way around slowly?
Yep, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to obviously put you behind the 8 ball a little bit, but certainly you can find a long way around. You don't need to make any rolls or anything like that because it's basically just, it takes that extra time.
Well, this was the alternative track after all, so I imagine there is a main bridge.
Yeah, that's right. So
either way, she's still well ahead of us on the account that she turned into a swarm of bats and flew away.
Exactly right.
So is there going to be an awkward conversation across the ravine where you're all yelling at me like, stay there, we're going to walk around?
Did you say...
And I'm like, what?
Did you say awkward or awkward?
Awkward.
That's better.
Awkward.
Awkward.
Right.
FYI, great orc character name. Awkward.
With the presence of 1. Excellent.
My character in a nutshell.
All right, so it takes you a little while to walk around, but you manage to get back on track. Some of you still have all of you have horses, I believe.
Well, we'll chase down the Durek's horse.
Which is, again, going to take some time. But you manage to find all the horses and start making your way down the road on its way to Nerakul. Now, because you're at a setback, are you going to take a rest overnight and sort of start at first light in the morning?
Well, I think we need to admit defeat in this case and rest because we're all tired.
Very.
This woman, she quite clearly is ahead of us anyway, so there's a little more we can do here now other than rest and get a fresh start and head to the city tomorrow.
Excellent. All right. So the rest of the evening passes without incident. You set up camp and you head out first thing in the morning.
Can I flip a story point?
Sure.
That by the time we get unpack our camping site and get started on the road, because let's face it, we didn't actually get that far from the tavern.
No.
So pretty much just as we set out on the road, our entourage of hired bandits, well, not hired bandits, what's a better word for it?
Coerced
bandits just so happened to catch up with us along the main road.
Right. Okay. So yes, and At the head of the group is the leader of the bandits, and he says, "So, how did it all go? Did you manage to catch up with her or not?"
I'd rather not talk about it.
Does it look like we caught her?
Well, I don't know. You may have, disposed of the body and whatever else.
That's some dark stuff right there.
Well, she's supposed to be evil, according to what you said.
She is of the utmost evil. But that need not concern you, bandit. Follow along and do what you're told.
Very well, sir. Ma'am.
Thank you. So I imagine at this point, Alice is fairly frustrated because this, character of pure evil revealed her hand because we forced her to.
Yes.
And nonetheless, though, she has gotten away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're all sort of back to where we started. She slipped through our fingers. We were so close. So Alice is very determined to get to the city and track this woman down and deliver the righteous punishment that she has coming.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, so a bit of a forced march or something like that at all, or just going to, just go with purpose?
I say we just go with purpose.
Cool. All right. So you soon after arrive, probably in the middle of the day. It's about a half-day travel on foot, and you arrive in the middle of the day. And as you get to Nerrick Hall, you can see that there are these 20-foot tall, quite well-built walls that surround the city. The first thing that you notice as you're going along the roadway, you can see these massive doors, these massive sort of gates, and they're quite solid. It looks like they're made of some sort of hardwood. The other thing that you notice is that there are a number of glyphs which are placed onto these doors. Only one of them is half open, and you can see that there are a number of guards which are up in the parapets looking down to see who's coming into the city itself. The other thing that you do notice, more so our good mage, is that you realise that these walls and doors are clearly warded, but they're not warded for things going in. They're actually warded for things coming out.
Intriguing.
Now I'm picturing this city in my head, and I'm seeing a fairly dark-toned Gothic structures everywhere.
You would be right, yeah, absolutely. Very Transylvania type look. Lots of
skinny, narrow buildings.
Yep. With tall peaks.
Yep.
With sharp points at the top.
What do the people look like?
So the people that are in the town themselves, as they're coming and going, they look to be quite forlorn. Is probably the best description. When you look sort of a little bit more closely at it, they move about as normal villagers do, but they certainly look a little bit downtrodden, as though that perhaps they're waiting for something bad to happen. The other thing that you notice is that when they see you, obviously with your large company of bandits, they sort of try to give you a wide berth, and you can see that they quicken their pace as they move in. From the top of the parapet, you can see a guard who has some sort of crest on his helmet, and he yells out and says, "Hello, travellers! What brings you to Nerrick Hall?
Just let us in, please.
And who are you, dwarf?
I am Ulma Grimstone.
And what brings you to our fine city?
Business of our own.
All business that goes on in Nerrick Hall is our business. You'll need to be more specific."
We are pursuing a criminal that has fled into your city.
I hardly doubt that. I know all about any criminals that come into my city.
Ones that turn into swarms of bats.
What? That sounds like dark magic. We work very, very hard to keep dark magic out of our city. We have seen enough dark magic in our times.
Well, if you're so interested in keeping dark magic out, then you should let us in to make sure that we can support you in that endeavour.
Says the orc weirdly intelligently.
In a brief moment of
in
insight.
a brief moment of insight.
All right. So,
He grunts afterwards just to make sure that he keeps his persona in check.
Right. Your orc friend next to you.
That was very well said.
I just shrug as in I don't even know where that came from and continue looking at a bug that I've just found on a blade of grass.
All right, so I'm thinking that maybe a negotiation roll would be appropriate in this circumstance, or I'd even consider any sort of social check given the way that you've spoken.
I'll go coercion. Alice Rain, she is of the Citadel, and she's not going to let some tower guard watching the entrance to some, city.
He does look like the captain of the guard.
Yeah,
Sure.
she doesn't care.
Okay.
Doesn't care. She sees herself above him because
Sure.
of her station. So she's going to stand up quite proudly in her, heavy armor and mace at one side, holding it like a badge of office. And she says quite abruptly to that man, the captain, "You will let us in to pursue this criminal, and we will hear no more complaints of it."
So I'm thinking either a leadership or a coercion roll.
I'll go coercion.
Okay. So the difficulty for this is just going to be 2 purple die. However, because of the Durek's suggestion that, as well as your own, that there are dark magics which are perhaps coming inside the town, that I believe that you can have 2 boost die for that.
Okay. All right, so Alice is pretty decent at coercion. She has 1 rank in it on a 3 willpower.
Yep.
So she's rolling 2 green dice, 1 yellow dice, against only 2 purple dice, with the assistance of the 2 boosts. So she's odds are stacked in her favour.
Yep.
But I am rolling it. So
That's true.
we'll see how this pans out. Oh, ooh, okay. It's a fairly decent roll. A nice, clean 3 successes.
Nice, clean 3 successes. Very well. You've proven your point. Please come in. But remember, this is a free city and should not be messed with. You will be watched at all times, outsiders. And the door opens slightly more to let this large party in, and you make your way through the main gate. The first area that you walk into is the marketplace. It seems to be quite bustling. It's certainly not a large marketplace that you might get in some of the larger cities, because Derrick Hall is actually quite small, mainly because of its past, which you may or may not know about. But you go into the main part of the markets and, people are selling wares and what have you. So what would you like to do?
Well, we need to find out where this lady is notoriously around, right? People would know her.
Surely someone
is
would have
true.
seen this carriage
Or
With no
perhaps
horses.
with no horses.
Or perhaps there is reports of frequent areas in the city where there's been lots of bodies turning up that seem to be incriminated.
So perhaps I should sort of describe the city a little bit more now that you're inside of its walls. Okay, so a couple of things that you can see straight away. As I said, the first thing that you see is the marketplace. It's filled with people coming and going, selling wares. The smell of cooked meats and spices is heavy in the air. You can see just beyond that, there looks to be a large town square with a large statue in the middle of the square, which appears to be a man who is dressed in some type of armour, but he also has a heavy cloak and a book, which he is holding in one hand with a sword in the other. You're not quite sure who this might be, but that's what you can see in the main town square, and it's surrounded by a fountain of sorts. You can also see beyond that, off to the left, you can see what looks like a number of buildings, which all seem to be of the same height and the same grade. but there's a large gold symbol which sort of seems to be at the front of the main building. From what our learned colleague, the mage, can see, is that will probably be some sort of an academy or something like that, somewhere, a place of learning. Beyond that, kind of almost in the middle of the town, rests a large building which kind of looks out of place. All the other buildings are very grey and dark brick, but this one is purely made of iron. It looks as though that it's possibly been constructed through the use of magic, but it stands out, and it's almost like a silvery beacon in the middle of this town. The iconology which is on the outside is similar to what appears at the academy, but it has a lot more intricacy with it. So if you may think that if anywhere, this is going to be the main point of where the mages who are in Neric Hall reside. You can see that there's a number of other places around here. There's a number of inns and cafes which scattered around the main part of the city. Lots and lots of buildings which are fairly close together. They looks as though that some of them have been damaged over time, but they've been sort of haphazardly remade. So it looks like that there may have been some sort of combat or something like that at some point along the track. To your immediate right, you can see that there is an old inn. It looks to be fairly sort of run down, but there's a lot of activity of people coming in, going from that inn. There's a couple of horses which are tied up outside. Now, probably off to the far right of the city, you can see that there is another large inn. It looks to be fairly affluent, and there are, very expensive horses. There's a carriage which isn't the carriage that you're looking for, and it looks as though the noble people are coming in and out of that particular inn. The thing that you probably notice the most about Neric Hall are the guardsmen. Now, the guardsmen themselves, they're quite well dressed. They seem to be quite well equipped. But the other thing that you do see that are with them, and it's probably on a ratio of maybe 1:3, you see these fairly well-built guardsmen, but they have a glow which comes from their eye sockets, and they move almost in a mechanical sense. Okay, so that's a bit of a description of the town and how it operates.
Leoric,
Yes.
where do we go next? This woman is of the magic. Your breed.
Not quite my breed. Her magic comes from another source. I doubt that she would head to the academies. They would know her for what she is.
They might know something that could help us.
They may. There are many scholarly texts amongst their libraries, I would imagine.
That too, but perhaps just from experience. If they're learned people of the city, then they may have heard things regarding this woman.
Oh, possibly, but do not discount the worth of the books there. They're very important.
Well, they might have books that are relating to their history of Neric Hall.
This is true. And there could be history of a vampiric creature dwelling here at some point, if not her the entire time. Because I'm led to believe they live for a fair few years, if they die at all.
Also, though, should we not ask about for a riderless carriage coming in the night?
Well, the riderless carriage did turn into a swarm of bats, so who's to say it came in at all, not just flew over the wall?
Ah, but they were assuming. Best to ask.
I'm not saying we don't. but where do we start?
What I think would be a good start, perhaps, is to maybe establish what you actually know about the history of Nericall. I'm thinking a knowledge geography check, if you'd like to make that. The difficulty for this is going to be 2 purple dice, because it's pretty average to know this sort of stuff. But the ins and outs, because you've never actually been to Nericall before, is going to be a single setback die, because it's not as well known as what most people outside of Nericall realise.
Jurek doesn't like cities. Just putting that out there. He avoids them.
I know nothing of this place. It reeks, though, I can tell you that. Now, don't forget that Mads, when we first played, rolled super gangbuster nuts on vampire knowledge.
That is true.
So she somehow knows everything about vampires, so that could give her some sort of advantage in the situation. If this place has a history of vampires, maybe she gets a boost.
Okay, it doesn't. But you can ask that. You can ask that question though.
We've weaseled the story out of him. No need to roll. Answers have been told.
Could this potentially be a lore check, as this is a city of magic?
That is a good idea. Sure.
So my character may tackle it from that perspective,
Sure.
given his knowledge.
Well,
of
one of the
area.
things now, before you even roll, I think that one of the things that you do know about Nericall is that it actually isn't that magical at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They shun magic a little bit.
But there's still a history there.
There is certainly a history involving magic, but they like to isolate it, it would appear.
Okay. But I can use law. Would that make it a more difficult
I'd
check?
you to lose all. Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a little bit harder, so I'm thinking that's going to be an extra difficulty die. So that's going to make it a hard check.
However, Leoric is a know-it-all, and with a flip of 2 story points, he's going to rely upon his recollection of the scholarly texts that he has studied in this particular matter, and he's going to recall an important fact about this situation, about Nericall.
Sure.
And this gives him an upgrade of the related ability once.
Okay. Well, that important point of Nericall, the most important thing that you remember about Nericall as you cast your mind back to your studies, is that you know that Nericall was once a wonderful city, probably one of the nicest cities in Terrinoth. But the problem is that underneath Nericall, a powerful and evil mage opened up a portal to the demon realm, and demons spilled out through the Underdark below the town and spilled out onto the streets. There was a great battle that went on. And you do know that the creatures, or the guardsmen with the glowing sort of visors, which you remember now what they're called. You know that they're called the Ironbound. And the Ironbound, they were created by less powerful mages, but powerful enough to create these constructs that actually were used en masse to attack and hold back the onslaught of demons that came through this portal. Obviously, a lot of them were destroyed, but the Ironbound, the ones that are still within Nericall, are all that's left. So there was this massive battle that went on.
Well, that knowledge, combined with my own extensive knowledge, leaves me, because I have a lore of 3 and a free upgrade, with an intellect of 4 yellow dice, and the 3 difficulty with the 1 setback.
Yep, absolutely.
So it is a successful check with 1 threat and a triumph.
Nice. Okay. So you're wanting to know a little bit more about Nericall. Okay. What specifically are you looking for information-wise, do you think? What sort of that your studies have shown that you've remembered?
So what position do the Academy and the mages play in this city, if this city shuns magic?
Okay. So what you do know is that the Academy itself, okay, it used to be a College of Magic, but it is no longer a College of Magic. They do teach the knowledge of where magic came from and things like that, but they certainly don't teach magic itself.
Okay.
And as far as the tower goes, you've heard from rumours, is that nobody comes in and out of the tower at all. This is where the mages who learn about the arts, who do live in Nerrick Hall, are sent, and they're not allowed to come out once they're in.
Right, so am I in danger if people find out I'm a mage?
Possibly.
And I've still got a triumph there.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to do with the triumph?
Perhaps I,
Maybe you know someone from here?
during my studies, was actually corresponding with someone from Nerrick Hall.
Oh.
And they're a local. And now seems like a good time to perhaps reconnect. And then they may know more about the city.
Maybe you know the dean of the university of the academy, perhaps.
Quite potentially, yes. I think I recall now. Yes, it is the dean.
Very good. Okay. Well, I think that you probably could make your way there. All right. One of the things that obviously Madeline isn't aware of, but our listeners have been made aware of. We've mentioned this a couple of times in our podcast. Are called skill challenges, and I think this is probably the perfect way to introduce people to what a skill challenge is. Now, a skill challenge is so that we can get everybody involved in the story. It's more a narrative way of doing a montage scene. So if you can imagine a training scene or something like that, or people studying, doing research and things like that. You might have seen something like that in Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that. So in this scenario, it's probably the easiest way to deal with an investigation that goes on. Okay, so there's going to be 6 successes before 3 failures. Now, that means that 3 failed checks, not 3 actual failures on your dice. And what we do is we tally up the number of successes that you make for a check. Now, what happens in this scenario is that if you fail, for whatever reason, you've been unable to find where she has perhaps gone. But if you succeed, obviously, you might learn a lot more about what's actually going on. Okay, so who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
So, Alice Rain, she is a bit of a fish out of water in this place. She's never been to the city before. In fact, she's probably pretty uncomfortable here because there is a sort of this sense of dread everywhere. So, what she's going to do is she's going to use her divine powers to try and sniff out any areas of the city which have a more corrupt vibe.
Okay.
Because going back from the city's history, where it had, demons pop up from under the sewers, which is, pretty chaotic.
Yep.
So if there is someone here with very, very strong ill intent, she's hoping to try and sniff them out or try and isolate them. Either that be by location or individuals prowling the city.
Okay.
So a combination of her divine senses plus her general investigative skills and gut feeling of who's bad, who's good, and generally try and narrow it down.
Right.
And she might even employ some of the bandits she's coerced to work with her.
Right.
Basically to be an extension to her eyes and ears. Most of her ability doing this is going to be her sensing chaotic forces or evil forces or whatever you like to call it. But more the bandits working with her are just going to provide a boost because they're just, pointing out people who look a little bit sus and pointing in the right direction because they're bandits. And I think they're going to know the more seedy sort of areas of a town. Okay. More naturally than her.
All right, I'm going to run this past you and let me know what you think. So what I'm thinking is, you can use your divine skill.
Yep.
But I think you're going to, because of the nature of it, I think you're going to use your cunning as your base stat for this. Okay. So this is an example where you can decouple your attribute from a skill. Because as you can see, Madeline, on all of the example skills, you can see that they're all attached to an attribute. Sometimes you can sort of twist that around a little bit and decouple the two of them and put them with another more appropriate attribute. And in this case, I think it's cunning, but still using that divine skill. I agree. You can have a boost die for the bandits who cast their net out.
That's a perfect word for it. Cast their net. So difficulty on this?
The difficulty for this is going to be 3 purple dice.
The dice I'm looking at for this check on behalf of my skill is going to be 2 yellow dice and 1 green dice. My cunning is a little bit lower than my willpower, which is what divine would normally go off of. But that's okay because I've got 3 ranks in divine, so I'm still rolling pretty high odds in my favour. So.
Excellent. Now, the other thing that I'm going to get you to add as well is just 1 setback die, because the bandits have never been here before, and neither have you.
Okay. Tell you what, because this is a fairly important set of rolls, and I believe the forces we're working against, my deity,
Provide you with some divine inspiration.
Yeah, some divine inspiration. So I'm going to spend a story point to upgrade my check. All right, here we go. It's going to be a failure.
Oh dear.
With 2 advantages.
Okay. So, this is how the check looks as far as the failure goes. So at this point, you find that some of your bandits, after you've given them instructions, and you've said after a certain period of time that they have to come back and discuss what they've found. Unfortunately, some have, during their time of trying to get some more information, have got themselves arrested by the town guard. The problem with that, obviously, is that questions are starting to get asked. So you realise that people are watching what you're actually doing. So it looks as though that the guardsmen are taking a particular notice of what's going on. But you rolled some advantages. What would you like to do with those?
With my 2 advantages, I'll use that to basically pass 2 boost dice along the lines to the next player to roll dice, representing the fact that I have indeed sort of been going around town asking questions, and my net of bandits have sort of started to unearth certain people here and there.
You've effectively shaken the tree.
Yeah, basically. And that sort of points us into some directions where to start asking more directed questions.
Yep.
So even though I didn't find anything really useful out at all with my check, I have found an approach, or potential approach anyway.
All right, one of the things that you hear some stories of a local lad who is normally a bully about town, who's effectively just gone to ground, and he's been quite distressed about an incident that happened involving a couple of his fellow miscreants.
Okay, that's been done.
Okay, you'd like to go next?
Do we know where this miscreant is?
We don't at this point, but you might be able to go looking, perhaps some streetwise or something like that.
Sure, let's give that a go.
All right.
Could I try adventuring and smell him out? Probably be less successful. Okay, so streetwise to try and find who this person is. I don't have any ranks in that, but I do have 3 in cunning. So 3 greens. What's the difficulty?
The difficulty for this is just going to be 2 purple die.
Okay, he's gone to ground, but not very well.
Well, he's gone to ground, but a lot of people are talking about it. And don't forget, you can add 2 boost die because the tree has been shaken.
Oh,
Alice has pointed you in the right direction of where he's likely to be found.
Okay. So mine is just 1 success and 1 advantage.
1 success and 1 advantage. Okay, what would you like to do with the advantage?
I would like the advantage to be that he is close by, so that we can gain access to him very easily. And that, you know how you mentioned before that he was shaken. Well, he is quite shaken and is looking for a friend.
Right.
And we can potentially be that friend for him.
Cool. Okay, so perhaps that turns into a boost die. For this, he's certainly willing to talk. So you being successful in that check, you managed to find him, and he's a little bit loose-lipped about what's actually gone on. Who'd like to talk to him? Okay, all right, so what would you like to talk to him about?
So we've heard rumours, I'm just clarifying, that he's gone to ground after something's happened with his miscreant.
So with his associates that he hangs around with, something awful has happened, but you're not quite sure what.
Yes, and we've been hearing a lot about that under our line of questioning. So it might be related, so I would like to ask him about that incident.
Okay. So what sort of skill would you like to use to talk to him? Perhaps some charm? I think that's probably appropriate to try to get into his good books.
Negotiation could potentially work as well.
Yeah, negotiation
I do
could
have
also work as well. You quickly find that his name is Dane Bulvett.
I think that this is a particular... He's really been shaken up by this event, and he wants to get out of town. We're offering him an olive branch, and I think that is worth a story point.
So what is this olive branch that you're offering?
If we tell him that he can join our bandits and get out of the city, that might be something that he's after. So if we flip a
and
story
he'll be
point.
well protected with his new group of friends as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm always ready for adventure, so we'll flip that point back. And
Nice.
so that we still have one.
Very good. And you can do that at any time, can't you?
Once per session, yes.
Nice. Excellent.
Okay,
All right.
so that...
Is an upgrade to your skill.
So the green goes to yellow.
So that's 1 success and 2 advantages.
Okay, 1 success and 2 advantages. Okay. So he's quite loose-lipped about what actually goes on. He tells you that he was involved in an incident the previous evening where he thought an easy target who had come into town, a fairly noble-looking woman, that what had happened is that he'd set up a bit of a sting, try to swindle her out of some money. They'd kept her under observation after she arrived, and she appeared to be staying at the Moonshade Inn, and they managed to follow her down an alley and corner her. And unfortunately, things didn't go to their plan at all. As one of them, she reached out with some arcane magic and snapped this person's neck. She sent him careening across the roadway, and suddenly just turned to his last associate and looked him in the eye, and suddenly he just followed her and then disappeared down the alleyway. What would you like to do with those advantages?
Let me just take a moment to think.
Sure.
Maybe not only having witnessed the...
Perhaps he saw where they went.
Yeah, because he's kept her under observation, so he may know more.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so, and that's the other thing to remember is you can always cast the question off to the other players if you're a little bit stuck. I think we mentioned that in our last episode as well. So the suggestion is that you actually, that he explains where they went. So down this alleyway, he didn't actually see where they went, but when he was able to get onto his feet, he rushed down the cobblestone path and he could not find them. However, he did see that there was a grate which led into the sewers, which was off to one side.
Oh, great.
All right, so that's 2 successes.
Well, Leoric has been off on his own. He's headed towards the academy.
Right.
To talk to his old friend, the Dean. So he's paying a social visit on the surface. So he's going to use charm in order to get as much knowledge that this man may have about the goings-on of the city and see what he knows.
Okay.
So 2 presents and 1 charm. And what would be the difficulty of this?
Difficulty for this, it's still going to be 2 purple dice, I'm thinking. He knows you, and you can, don't forget, you can upgrade the check as well, as we mentioned before.
Yeah, because it was a triumph that, so we're good friends.
Exactly right.
I've known him for some time. In addition to that, I'd like to use that story point from earlier, because we've not really made much headway at this stage, and so the gravitas of the situation is really pressing upon me and driving my investigation here.
Sure, absolutely. You can use that last story point to upgrade the check again, which for the viewers at home leaves 5 of the story points in the GM's box.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Anything else that I should take into account for this check?
Well, I guess what sort of questions are you asking of the Dean? So you're asking kind of what's been going on, or whether there's been any unusual activity?
Well, I'll start casually and ask him how he's been.
Sure.
And, what's been happening in the city. It's been a long time. What's the news lately? Oh, that's unusual. Has there been any sort of, and lead into some more pointed questions?
Sure, okay. I think that's a good description. You can have a boost die for that, I think.
All right. Well, that's 2 yellows, a green, and a blue against 2 purples.
Sure.
So the results look like this: 1 success, and 4 advantages. However, I have a proper upbringing, which puts me in good stead with this gentleman.
Okay.
So for 1 strain, I will add an additional advantage to that result. Cool. So I have 5 advantages.
Wow. Okay. What does that look like?
Well, he opens up to me, he talks about the goings-on in the city and what anything that might have caught his attention of late.
Sure. One of the things that he mentions is that activities in the town have been that some people have been disappearing of late, and some of those people have shown up, several with stab wounds, others being strangulated. The bodies have been taken into the academy for study by their biology department type thing. But soon after, those bodies have disappeared.
So has this been going on longer than she would have been in the city?
He indicates that this has been going on for probably a good couple of months.
Okay. So for my advantages then, perhaps he actually has a contact in the medical department that will let me see one of the bodies.
Sure. Well, he takes you down to take a look at one of the bodies, and he's quite interested that you're interested in this part of the investigation. Okay, so he leads you down into the morgue, and you notice that with one of the advantages there is a recent body which has been brought in. He grabs some of the notes from the examination of the body, and he's sort of flipping through the pages, and he's sort of quite shocked, and leans down and says, "Come and take a look at this." And he'd look down and he can see what appear to be 2 bite marks, exactly the same sort of bite marks that you saw of the victims from the homestead. And this particular person has been completely drained of blood.
Ah, I've seen this sort of thing before.
Oh, you have?
Yes, at a homestead outside of town.
My goodness. What could it be?
I'm not sure, but I think that we must get to the bottom of this.
Well, there you have it, part 3 of the Dice Pool Podcast live play event, The Haunted City. We all here at the podcast hope that you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've had creating it. What will the heroes find as they delve deeper into the mysteries of Nerik Hall? Will Lady Farrow be found and her plan foiled? And will Alice's crisis of faith, or at least Michael's dice rolls, be restored to normal? Find out the answer to these questions and more next time when the Dice Pool Podcast's Live Play Edition returns for Part 4 of The Haunted City. My thanks go to my players Caitlin, Martin, Michael, and our newest player Madeline. It literally was not possible without them. I'm GM Hurley, thanks for listening, and remember, the Dice Pool Podcast, where adventure is just a roll away. The Dice Pool Podcast is a proud member of the D20 Radio Network. For more information about the network, visit www.d20radio.com. The Dice Pool Podcast is a fan-generated podcast. All of the information provided on the podcast and related website are not affiliated with Fantasy Flight Games or any of their licensors. The content of this podcast remains a property of the Dice Pool Podcast and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The GeneSys Role Playing Game, the GeneSys logo, content and all material remain the property of Fantasy Flight Games.